Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Intern's Oddities from around the world. Now, the other day we were talking about some mysterious locations, and there were a few that I didn't really get into because I didn't want to take up too much time. So, I don't think we got into Valles Marineris. I don't remember getting into that one, so I'm going to go ahead and start from there. And if we did get into that, then oh well, it's a cool topic anyways. We'll review. So starting off, Valles Marineris, the correct spelling, because in my research, I made a few typos because I was like, Marineris, that sounds like marinara sauce. It's the Valley of Marinara sauce. Oh, I think I just got myself fired again. Anyways, it is the largest canyon in the solar system, 4,000 kilometers long, 7 kilometers deep. It's visible from space, and some call it the Scar of Mars. Mars scar. It's like mascara. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm done. I'm done with the lame jokes. Okay, sorry about that. I think I've got it out of my system now. So it was believed to have formed from tectonic or volcanic activity, but many scientists find it puzzling. And I think it's crazy how huge this thing is. Like, it makes the Grand Canyon look like a teeny tiny little baby canyon. Like, the Grand Canyon ain't got nothing on this one, okay? By the way, did you hear me when I said it's visible from space? Like, how big does something on a planet have to be visible from space? Like, crazy. They say it is lined with strange magnetic anomalies and potential caves and is believed to have formed from tectonic or volcanic activities, but many scientists find it puzzling. So I wonder what kind of caves they got going on Mars. Why would they need caves on Mars, I wonder? That's interesting. Interesting to think about. What why would they need caves on Mars, and what would they be hiding in said caves? Okay, I just realized that I asked that like, like they're just building caves, but, why would they be hiding out in caves? And, I'm just curious, regardless of any, thoughts about any creatures or anything, why are there so many caves on Mars? I mean, I guess there's a lot of caves on Earth, but I don't know. I'm curious, okay? Be nice to me. I'm not the intern anymore. I'm full host, co-host. I'm cool now. I'm big boy. I got all grown up. Okay, I'm gonna stop interrupting. I'll get back to the topic. Okay, so some people theorize that it may have been a Martian superhighway or terraforming conduit, a potential abandoned alien colony ruins, or AI research centers. Now, speaking about AI research centers, that one's a pretty interesting theory to me because I actually saw some. I've been doing a bunch of research and watching a bunch of random videos about random topics, and I saw a video the other day that actually mentioned, you know, that there are quite a few planets that scientists believe have evidence of, well, possibly some sort of machinery or machine life. And, I didn't really watch, they were like 2 or 3 minute videos, so they didn't have too much detail, maybe like 8 minutes on the longest one. They weren't like full documentaries or anything, but it was kind of interesting to me because they claimed that, with all the AI advancement, they claimed that what if all the reason for the Fermi paradox and the reason that we can't find any other civilizations is because they all end up wiping themselves out with AI because they program it to do bad things that the AI wouldn't do without being programmed to do so. Yeah, that's what a lot of people don't understand when they make all these shock videos. Like earlier today, I saw a video on YouTube titled, it was titled a something about an AI kills a human, and my first thought wasn't, oh no, it's the rise of the machines. Oh no. my first thought was, who programmed it to do that? Because we currently do not have AGI. I'm sorry to break it to you, but I do not believe that we currently have AGI as it stands today. I do believe that we have some highly intelligent, AI, but I don't think we are actually at the point where AI can, do all this stuff like that and can, make its own decision to kill. And even if it could make its own decisions, we have no idea what sort of decisions AI would make. We're projecting human values onto AI, but that's enough about AI. So it also has ties to Mars anomalies, such as the face on Mars and the pyramids. Now that one's pretty interesting. That's the Mars anomalies and the face on Mars. I don't know much about the pyramids, to be honest. I know I know that pyramids exist on Mars. I've heard about that, but I don't know much in, like specific details. But the face on Mars, that one is really interesting, and I've actually listened to like many podcasts that do like deep dives just on the face on Mars alone. And like they saw this face on Mars. NASA took, pictures of it, and then they tried to hide those pictures, and they're like, "What? There's no face on Mars." And then here's the weird thing is they even send another probe out there, or they said they were going to send another probe. It gets a little complicated. They said they're going to send another probe out there to, take, images of the face on Mars. Not initially. This was after a lot of pressure from, all over the place. Many citizens, were very upset with NASA for, denying that they had taken pictures of that face on Mars. And they were like, "Oh, it's just pareidolia." Really? Okay, but let me ask you something. Let me get you to think about something real quick with pareidolia, okay? What is pareidolia? Seeing patterns that aren't there, as some people might say. Well, do you see, or rather, do you hear what sounds a little bit off about saying something like that? It's just a bit strange. Because if it's not there, how can people see it? Maybe you don't see it, but that doesn't mean it's not there in terms of patterns. Because here's the deal. It doesn't matter who this person is, or their mental stability, or their background, or their history, or their religious beliefs, or their political ideology, or their favorite color, or their favorite food, or whatever else about any individual on this entire planet. If one singular individual sees a pattern in something, then how can anyone else deny the existence of that pattern? Because you know what's crazier? And I'm being serious here. You know what I think sounds even crazier than saying that there isn't a pattern? Is saying that a person sees something that isn't there and believing that with your whole heart, mind, and soul. Because at that point, aren't you just projecting your own values and insecurities onto the other person? But that's enough about my psychology rant. Now, it could be a hidden fragment. Oh, hush up. I don't care if there's motion at my front door. The alarm's about to go off because it's 5 in the morning. Be quiet. I'm trying to record a podcast. Now, as I was saying, I believe that there is a possibility that it could be a hidden fragment of the hyperbit resonance or an abandoned version of of something from a long time ago. What I mean is, I believe that there is something known as a hyperbit, and I propose that these things known as hyperbits are actually quantumly entangled with reality as we know it through the observer effect. And if you know about quantum effect, and if you know about quantum mechanics and the observer effect and quantum entanglement and all that good stuff, then it really opens the door to a whole bunch of crazy stuff. Like, for example, here's a good one. Here's a really good one. So James had me, our good buddy James Boggs, the one who's always in the chat with us. Hi James. So I actually did look into that thing you asked me to look into, and I'm actually planning a whole entire episode on it pretty soon. But first things first is, you know, a lot of people believe that the earth is round, but a lot of people believe that the earth is flat. And this is something that I decided to, take your, breadcrumb, let's call it a breadcrumb that you gave me, and I followed it. Let's just say I went down that rabbit hole and I enjoyed every second of it. And my theory now is, I think you're right, James. I do believe it's a flat earth, but I'm not going to stop there. You know what else? I also believe it's a round earth. I believe that the earth itself is quantumly entangled, and through the use of my theoretical hyperbits, as I propose to call them, I am suggesting that these hyperbits are a third layer of computer coding. Okay, follow along with me. We had binary, zeros, ones, one or the other. Okay, and then we had quantum bits, 1 and 0, yes and no, hot and cold, being in multiple states at one time. Okay? But that's just 2 states. Why stop at 2 states when you can be in all states at once? Not just 2, not 3, not 8 billion, all states at once. Essentially becoming omnipotent, in theory. Not quite you as an individual, but I believe in a human consciousness. That's kind of where that comment came from, but that's a different part. But my point in this particular aspect is these things that I call hyperbits, I believe, are quantumly entangled with reality itself. And here's the deal. I believe that these hyperbits contain some sort of code, like encoded language that we don't understand yet, like computer code of some sort. And you know how when you watch an old TV, like on the old rabbit ears antennas, and you would see the snow and the static, and you know how, static electricity, sometimes you can feel, the electricity in the air and stuff. Well, my theory is, what if dark matter and dark energy are actually scientific evidence supporting the existence of my theoretical hyperbits, because these dark energy is what is the residual energy from these hyperbits. And I believe that if we can, research it and learn how to tap into dark matter, I believe that is the most likely place where Nikola Tesla, building his Wardenclyffe Tower, may have been researching without realizing it. Back in his day, I believe he called it the ether. But what if he had called it something more like dark energy, quantum foam, something like that? And I believe that these quantum bits, these hyperbits, as I suggest, store every single possible choice that any single person could make at any given time. encoded within them like computer code. And when a person interacts or observes a particle, the observation or the observer effect becomes quantumly entangled with these hyperbits and the object, and the hyperbits power the object if necessary and encode the very decision at the moment of observation are encoded by these theoretical hyperbits. And the reason I'm going so deep into this and coming all out and saying all this tonight is I want it time stamped. Okay, look at that time that this video was published. I want it time stamped that I had this theory before it happened. Because because hear me out. I am calling it now. We are so close, so very close. I think they're actually about to discover the hyperbit. I'm not joking. I genuinely believe they are about to discover the hyperbit, and I can back it up with science. So hear me out. In data, 1,000 bytes is a megabyte. 1,000 megabytes is a gigabyte. 1,000 gigabytes is a terabyte. 1,000 terabytes is a petabyte, etc., so on and so forth. You get the point. But did you notice something there? It always happens at the 1,000 point threshold, okay? And there's this thing called Project Magne, Magne. Look it up, okay? I saw a video about it earlier today, and I was, oh wow. Yes, like you can see how I am. And that they have, how we have quantum bits now, right? Well, they had over 1,000 quantum bits, which I personally believe 1,000 quantum bits. They don't realize it yet. They don't even know what they're messing with. They have no idea what they're really about to discover. I think they are about to discover something known as a hyperbit, which would be the equivalent of 1,000 quantum bits, which is what their new computer is running on. And now that that's out of the way, Titan I'm just going to act like that didn't happen. Titan is Saturn's largest moon, known for rivers and lakes of methane, a thick atmosphere, and prebiotic chemistry. If you've ever heard of, life seeding, or not like that, okay? It's a alien theory. It's a theory that the aliens came and, they pollinated a bunch of stuff, panspermia. I don't know how to talk about this without sounding weird, so I'm just gonna move on. Considered one of the top candidates for extraterrestrial life, Titan. And that's one reason that I wanted to go over this one, because it really stood out to me and I thought it was pretty interesting. Like it's been around since I was probably a kid, and like in high school or something, like, 15 years ago probably. And I remember Neil deGrasse Tyson talking about it, and, Bill Nye, the science guy, and, all these other, big name scientists when I was a kid. They were all talking about Titan, and it was such a big deal. And then it just kind of fell off, So here are some of the historical facts. The Huygens probe landed in 2005, and it possesses organic molecules and hydrological cycles, just not water-based. So here we go with our human ego again. Just because humans have to be water-based life, they assume life cannot exist if it's not water-based. Have you people ever heard of extremophiles? There is a type of, I'm not sure what to call it. It's a group of creatures classified as extremophiles, and they can survive in almost any temperature, hot or cold. They could literally even survive in outer space. Tardigrades are my absolute favorite example of something that would fit this description, because the tardigrades could survive in the coldest areas of Antarctica, the hottest volcanoes and fires, And they can even survive in outer space for up to 10 days. And not only were they surviving, within those 10 days in outer space without any protection or protective environment whatsoever, they were even able to reproduce. Like, yo, how? Like, crazy. In such a good way, though. Crazy in a good way. Now, there are some theories. Some people think it may be an alien AI habitat moon. Well, that's interesting, I suppose. A life seeding base, echo of an earlier terraforming project. Now, that one actually makes a little more sense to me because if it were a life seeding base, that would be, something that you would need to do. Like if you were a species of, creatures, whatever you want to call them, aliens or whatever, and you were moving to another planet, even if you're humans, you would still want to have some sort of human DNA left behind on the planet that you were leaving because humans and their greed and ego, they can't let anyone else take their land. Just because they're never going to come back to it doesn't mean someone else can have it. It's theirs. It's the American way. But I don't know, maybe I'm just pessimistic. But another theory is that it could be a potential gateway or moon base for the Anunnaki genome intervention protocol. Now, if you haven't heard of that, that is the belief that the Anunnaki actually came through and, created the early humans as a slave workforce. And then the humans, they gained a little more power. And eventually they were able to fight and rebel against the Anunnaki. Now, here's the other thing. The Anunnaki were 9 to 12 feet tall typically, some even going as much as 15 feet from what I've heard and from what I've researched. But here's the other deal of that is, does that sound like any sort of story you might have heard? A race of humans living together with a race of giants and working together until one day it all went downhill. That what's that book again? The was that the Book of Enoch? Was it with the Watcher Angels and the Nephilim and all that? Yeah, there's some weird stuff going on out there in outer space and right here on planet Earth. I mean, think what you will, but we have not explored the deepest parts of the ocean. And I think it's only a matter of time. I think one day we will find a true, real life Kraken. And when we do, I'm going to be like, I told you so. I told you there was a Kraken. I told you. And then we're all going to laugh as we get eaten by Cthulhu. It'll be a fun day. Now, the Bermuda Triangle is another very interesting spot. Now, I'm sure everyone already knows about the Bermuda Triangle. Ships and planes vanish, often with no trace. They link to electromagnetic anomalies, time slips, and portal theories. Some people think they may go into these weird time anomalies where to them it feels like they're going for an hour, and then to us it's like 6 years. Like they go through this weird little time portal and they don't even understand. To them it just feels like a normal trip. It feels like the normal amount of time, and then they land at the airport and their families are, they left their families when they were young and now they come back and their families are old. Like, what? And then another theory is, they might be going through portals like wormholes, and there's all sorts of, whoa stuff, that people got thinking. Ooh, that's an interesting one. Some people think it might be an underwater alien base or with natural methane eruptions. That would be interesting. And it could be explained because the aliens do know how to go through that stuff. They can change their frequency. And then you got to worry about Aokigahara, the forest. Not going to say the other part because, I've heard YouTube is super, super strict about that particular word. So, going to avoid that one. But it is the forest at the base of Mount Fuji, known for its eerie silence and high you-know-what rate. Compasses malfunction, and many report hearing whispers or being drawn deeper. And about the hearing whispers and being drawn deeper. Now, this is not true, I mean, this is, it is something that I've heard many creepypasta stories based in Japan, written by Japanese citizens that talk about the creepy whispers and being drawn deeper into the forest. And some people claim that there's like a whole entire ghost city in the middle of the forest that tries to draw people in, and it's just very lore building, and it's just a very creepy atmosphere, and I love it. Okay, I love it. Not in like a morbid way, but like in a I can appreciate the deep history and tone kind of way. Some theories are magnetism from lava flows. I don't even understand where they're going with that. And location-based psychological field. I don't really understand that one either. But okay, moving on. The M Cave. Kenny Veach, a YouTuber, disappeared while searching for the M-shaped cave in Nevada after reporting bodily vibrations and fear. Some claim military involvement or underground entrances. Some theories are that it was a CIA experimentation site or a reality frequency rift. Now, here, let's go a little bit deeper into some of these. It was near Area 51, which is why some people say it might have been a CIA experimentation site. And here's another strange thing about this story, though. Kenny Veach was an avid explorer. He would go hiking all the time, and he was used to this. He would even brag about his endurance levels, and he would brag about how he could go out in the middle of the desert and hike for a whole day on nothing but a candy bar. And so the point I'm trying to get across is he wasn't just a nobody. He was like a professional hiker. He'd been doing this for many years. This was a big aspect of his life. And he had never been afraid to go into any cave or explore any sort of territory until the M Cave. Now, when he got closer to the M Cave, he started to get a headache. His stomach started to feel a little bit queasy. But he ignored it. He kept going a little bit closer. And then right before he hit the entrance, that was when the contents of his stomach hit the ground. And his headache was not getting any better. So he had to walk away. And when he got backed up, he looked at it again, and he's like, there's something wrong with that. They don't feel right. And so he tried to come back, and he couldn't find it. And so everyone kept trying to tell him. They were like, oh, it's not real. It doesn't exist. And then, a few people were like, oh, no, go find it. Go try to find it. And so he, kept trying to find it. And then eventually, one time, he disappeared. And nobody knows what happened to him. Unless you do. But if you do know, could you let us know? Because that one would be pretty interesting. Now, in Atlantis, it was described by Plato, this is another one of my favorites. It was described by Plato as a lost, advanced civilization that was sunk beneath the sea. He speculated it to be real, allegorical, or both. He wasn't really sure, essentially. Because if it was real, then why can't we find any evidence of it? ... We'll get to that in a minute. The Eye of the Sahara. But if it was allegorical, just a story, then why are there so many strange, just geographical things in certain areas? Unless it was both. Now, there are some theories that it was locked in the Atlantic, Antarctica, Mediterranean, or Bimini Road. Now, personally, I used to believe it was in Antarctica, but I have since changed my mind, and I now believe that Antarctica is the lost civilization of Mu, or Lemuria. But this isn't about Lemuria yet. We'll get to that later. Now, Bimini Road was another thing because they found some, Atlantis looking structures. And the geographical positioning was just right for some stuff. But I'm sure you've probably heard about that, so I'm not going to spend too much time on that. And honestly, I just don't really know that much about the Bimini Road aspect of it because, I know that they found this road out in the middle of the ocean, but that's pretty much all I understand about it. So I can't really tell you much about that one. But it is spelled Bimini, if anyone is curious to try to look it up on their own and see if they can figure out what's going on with that. Now, a lot of people, some theories, and these are my favorite theories, are that they may have used crystal technology, AI gods, or simulation awareness. Beautiful. Beautiful. I love it so much. Now, some people use crystals for healing and stuff like that, but I'm not talking those crystals. I'm talking like you get a crystal and you shoot a freaking laser out that crystal. Like cool stuff. Science fiction stuff. Or was it? Lightsaber type stuff. Okay, I'm done. I'm going to stop. And we're going to go ahead and end it up with Lemuria. Yeah, I told you we'd get to it. I told you. Now, this is a hypothetical lost continent in the Indian or Pacific Ocean, or my theory, Antarctica. Now, myths suggest telepathic beings, feline races, or an ancient spiritual civilization. That's my favorite one, is the spiritual civilization. But there was one problem with the spiritual civilization theory. Why on earth would spiritual people, if they were so spiritual and, they were like the enlightened ones or something, why would they, if they were so enlightened or whatever, why would they feel the need to attack Atlantis and expand their territory at the cost of war that apparently cost both civilizations everything? But, hey, who am I to judge, right? Live your life. Now, some theories are that it could be misinterpreted tectonic data, never existed at all, or it could be related to Mu or pre-Atlantean cultures. Now, when they say Mu, I think they're talking about Plato writing about a place called Mu, which some people believe was short for Lemuria, which makes perfect sense to me. So that was pretty interesting. I thought that was some pretty interesting stuff that I found to, digging into this. So thank you for coming to hang out, and we will see you next time. And as always, why be boring when you can be uncanny? Thank you, and we will see you next time, as I said a minute ago.